Let's dive into the streaming paradox of the decade. Why is Spotify still the king of music streaming, even though musicians, fans, and critics all seem to have bones to pick with it? Well, whether it's the poor payouts, the AI generated fakes, or tone deaf executives, Spotify's been in the crosshairs. But despite it all, over 675 million people still keep hitting play. So today we're breaking down the 10 reasons why Spotify continues to dominate. And then we'll flip the script and take a look at 6 very real reasons why people want to ditch it. Let's dive into it, shall we? I hope you're doing well. This is the Studio Live Today podcast. My name's Pete Johns, and if you'd like to keep up with all the latest goings on around here, make sure you're subscribed. Head over to studiolivetoday.com for all of the links to all of the things that can help you create, record, and release your best music. Let's talk Spotify. Reason number 1 why it's the still most popular platform. User experience. Look, the user experience in Spotify isn't perfect, but it works. It's consistent and people like it. You can log into Spotify right now. In fact, many of you probably have Spotify running in the background right now. And you just log in and you go to music and it just works. It's consistent across mobile, across desktop, across TV, car, smart speakers. Anywhere you've got audio, you've got Spotify, and that does make a big difference. Spotify Connect makes switching devices pretty seamless, so you can just pick up where you left off if you move from one to the other. And features like the canvas loops, the autoplay feels polished and responsive. There's low friction for new users, so setup and navigation are all intuitive. And fast updates and a stable app compared to the likes of YouTube Music, which used to be Google Play Music, or things like Tidal or Deezer or Amazon Music. All of these don't really focus. Spotify got one thing, which is music streaming, and they do it. You could argue that they now have podcasts and other things as well, but they really do focus on their core competency. So for all of the criticisms, which we will get to, of Spotify, you got to say that the user experience and the ability, the barrier to entry of just using it definitely makes it an easy thing. And when you say Spotify, you mean music streaming, don't you? There's no difference. If you say Amazon Music or YouTube Music, people think you're buying some batteries or you're watching some videos. Spotify is all about the audio. Number 2, the discovery tools. So Spotify has things called Discover Weekly, Release Radar, Daily Mixed. They're all best in class. And if you've used other platforms and you've tried to use the mix options and the playlisting options, it never quite works exactly as well as Spotify does. They've got Day List, which adapts dynamically based on the time and day of habits. By the way, some of this information I'm pulling from sources because I don't personally use Spotify. I'll tell you why a little bit later. The algorithm is considered to be the most accurate for mood-based curation. And again, I simply can't argue with that. When I've been to parties, I've gone to Christmas parties. If you say, hey, Buggerlugs, play a playlist of Christmas songs, it nails it. It gets it right for the mood, for the type of person you are, for the environment. So it's good. Editorial playlists. So there's the playlisting feature there, and as creators, you probably want to get on those playlists. And it is Spotify playlists primarily that we're talking about when we talk about music playlists. You can blend and share playlists and mix recommendation with friends listening, and this is a massive one. When my daughter was getting into music listening, she said to me, "Dad, I want Spotify Premium," because she had the free version. And I said, "Honey, you have Apple Music already. You're part of my family plan. You have YouTube Music. You're part of my family plan." And she said, "I want Spotify because that's where my friends are." So you can't deny that social factor that if your friends are there and you're sharing playlists, guess what? If you're on YouTube Music, it's like not being the blue bubble of the group. You're the odd one out and you're left out of a lot of those musical virtual conversations. Let's talk about number 3. There's no denying it's got a massive music and now podcast catalogue, over 100 million songs and 7 million podcasts. Regular early release partnerships with major artists, so there are some things that exclusively come out on Spotify, and they come out on Spotify first. Again, if you're into a particular artist and they're doing a big Spotify launch and you won't get it on another platform for another week, where are you going to go? They've got indie-friendly uploads. So yes, you can get your stuff on Spotify via DistroKid, who are a sponsor, full disclosure, of this channel, or TuneCore, CD Baby, a bunch of other places. They now are moving into things like audiobooks and video podcast support, which expands out the content even more. And they do have some pretty smart metadata. If you've ever submitted a song, a lot of that metadata that you put in there around your location and your genre and your style and your mood and your vibe, you might think that doesn't go anywhere, but it does go deep into the Spotify algorithm. So if you've ever wondered why Spotify finds just the right music for you, it's probably because the artists have done a lot of hard work tagging the metadata for you. So huge music, podcast, catalog, audiobooks now. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there, isn't it? The podcasts, number 4. Let's talk about podcasts. They're built in and they're growing. So it is now a top destination, coming up to the top destination for podcast listeners globally. The only challenge that we have with podcasts is why whenever you listen to one, they say wherever you get your podcasts, because it is very split. When podcasts started, they were called that because of the Apple iPod. I know there's probably kids out there now that don't even realize that. What's an iPod? An iPod was a music playing device that someone said, hey, let's use RSS feeds, really simple syndication feeds, and create these podcasts where they can be audio that's downloaded. Just like you download your music playlist from iTunes, you can subscribe to podcasts in iTunes and then sync them to your iPod. So that was where people listen to podcasts. But now, yeah, people are on Google Android, they're on the Google podcast player, they're on YouTube listening to podcasts now, because that's another location. Nerds like me use apps like Overcast to play our pods. There's Podbean. There's all sorts of different ways you can listen to podcasts. Look, they got exclusive deals. I only need to say the words Joe and Rogan for you to know that, yeah, if you want to listen to Joe and Rogan, you got to go to Spotify, and I'll leave it up to you to decide whether I think you should listen to Joe or Rogan. You got integrated features, you got video in there, you got polls, Q&As, timestamps. You've got one feed for music and podcasts. So if you are someone and you just want to have one app, why wouldn't you sync up all your music playlists and your podcasts? Everything you're listening to while you're on the go is all in one app. I mean, you can see the convenience, can't they? Can't you? And now they have what used to be something that I used to use, which was Anchor, which is now Spotify for podcasters. And if you're wondering why I don't put out an audio version of this podcast, it's because I used to use the free service, Anchor FM, and Spotify bought it, and now it's Spotify for podcasters. And look, I don't have a reason, I don't have a deep concern or hatred for Spotify. I used it. I used to like it when it was one of the early ones, because I used a couple of other ones when music streaming first started, and then I moved into Spotify, and I did quite like it. And it's only been since I've been a creator and someone who's helping others create, record, and release music that I've seen some of the cracks around the edges start to appear. So yeah, there is that. Number 5, a freemium model that actually works. Yeah, look, I've been critical of freemium in the past. Sometimes it can be like those games where it gives you this FOMO of making sure that you're always buying, always upgrading. And look, it's not that Spotify doesn't do that, but it definitely offers the best free tier among all of its competitors. So if you're willing to listen to an ad or two, and if you're willing to not have that complete control, the ability to play exactly the songs you want in the order you want at the time you want, and let's be honest, a lot of people listening to Spotify are doing it for discovery. They're doing it for background. They're doing it for mood and for vibe. So they're not necessarily going to go, I can't listen to exactly that song. So the free model is probably great for them. Free users can create playlists. They can access the discovery features. The ad revenue supports artists. Some artists, we'll get to that, and subsidizes the free listening. And yeah, it is a smooth path to premium. It's, look, the notes I've got here say it's clean and no pressure. That sounds more like Spotify speak. But I got to admit, apart from Spotify emailing me about once a month saying, come back, Johns, we miss you, 3 months for $8.99, and me going, I have 3 other music streaming platforms I currently pay for, so no thank you. So yeah, it is really easy to do that. And family plans and duo plans can definitely attract listeners as well. Number 6. Oh yeah, I talked a little bit more before about the social and the peer pressure of all your friends being on Spotify. Yeah, the social sharing and the community features are actually pretty rad. You've got collaborative playlists that let multiple users build a set list together. I listen to podcasts where they put together Spotify, official podcast Spotify playlists, and people can actually contribute to them. And I'm just sitting there on the outer going, is there a YouTube music version of this? And there never is. It can merges and blends taste between users. So most things do as well. Spotify codes, shareable links, and Canvas visuals are perfect for social media. You've probably seen these. You've probably seen people that have QR codes and have other things that it can be actually created all within Spotify. You got your Spotify for Artists page. You can say, hey, here's my QR code. You can put it on your flyer for your show, and then people can listen to your music to get ready for it. And let's not forget the biggest FOMO event of the year, which is Spotify Wrapped. And look, YouTube Music try to do it now, Apple Music try to do it, but it's called Spotify Wrapped. It's not called other music streaming platform Wrapped. So if you know, you know. If you use Spotify, you know that Wrapped is a big thing when it comes to social. Finding out what you stream the most and then finding out how cool or uncool your friends and family are is pretty cool. And look, you can actually set things up to be able to see what your friends are listening to and have public playlists. There's some funny stories around that of people tapping into what other people are listening to and some naming and shaming. So don't do that, please. If someone's left there playing public and they've just listened to the Big Bluey album because maybe their kids are around, or maybe they're not and they just really love Bluey. That's me. Number 7, ubiquitous device support. With the possible exception of that Spotify car thing that was an absolute failure, every other device, it kind of works. It works with iOS, it works with Android, it works with your watches, it works with your PlayStations, your Xboxes, your cars, your speakers. Everything has a Spotify option. Why? Because it's the most popular. Of course, cars are going to have a Spotify button instead of a Deezer button or a Tidal button because the vast majority of people are going to have Spotify. Most people don't know what a Deezer or a Tidal actually is. You get offline playback. So if you're a premium user, you get offline playback. Look, you do with every other platform now as well. And I don't know that Spotify pioneered it, but yeah, it definitely was one of the features I loved at the start because, hey, data is still not ubiquitous and still pretty expensive in some parts of the world. So anytime you can not use your data, especially if, like me, you play the same Tool and Radiohead albums over and over again, you might not be downloading those every time. You might as well have them there. And of course, you got like your HomePod and your Google Home and your Amazon Bugalugs. They're all supported, so you can ask it to play. And I actually, for a while there, I changed mine to Spotify, even though I have YouTube Music and Apple Music, for weird reasons. If you're an Apple Music user, you'll probably come across this, and even YouTube Music. YouTube Music will sometimes just find a random YouTube live video and play that instead of the studio album song, and Apple Music is notoriously bad for finding some weird remix or some weird B-side or live version and playing that. So you could say, hey, Bugalugs, play Radiohead Creep, and it plays Radiohead covering, like some other band covering Creep, or Radiohead playing Creep live at Reading Festival in 1997. So yeah, it's a bit weird. Whereas Spotify, it seems to really help you. Look, I touched on it briefly, but next one. No, number 8. Sorry, I'm jumping the gun here. The global reach of Spotify. It is available in over 180 countries. And it does do a really good job of giving you regional music. So I was talking about this with my wife, that the reason we listen in the car, we actually listen to the local digital radio stations because they play a lot of local stuff. And yes, because you asked, it is 90s. We play the mixed 90s and the rock 90s and the old school 90s. We love the 90s because we were in our 20s in the 90s, and that's just how most people roll. But yeah, being able to have that regional focus, and again, because Spotify has so much of your data, which you can consider a good thing or a slightly scary thing, they can actually do really good job of working out who you are, where you're from, what you're on, what you want to listen to. Different languages and genres are customized across the markets, and they've actually got strong inroads now into places like Latin America and India and Southeast Asia and Africa. they're actually increasing their reach across the world globally and local charts as well. So you can actually work out what's popular in your area. And that can be important, again, for those social reasons we talked about before. I touched on it in another section, but number 9, let's just talk about Spotify Wrapped again. It really has become a cultural moment. And if there's one thing that makes me fear the missing out of the not being the Spotify, it's that I don't have a Spotify Wrapped. And in December, every year, all over Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and Facebook and wherever you're sharing your stuff, people are talking about Spotify Wrapped. And if you don't know what it is, it's a year-end wrap-up of all of your user data. So all of that data that you've been faithfully providing about what you listen to, when you listen to it, how you listen to it, who you listen to, that's all collated, that's all collected, and it's all put together into a nice visual display that you can then send out and flex your great taste in music, or share how diverse your music is, which is cool. And artists get rap stats too. So Spotify for artists, we get our own rap. So we get to find out who's listening to us, what songs of ours they're listening to, where they're listening. Very cool, because sometimes you hear, oh my God, I didn't know I was really that big in Guatemala. But apparently Guatemala really digs Pete John's music. You don't know that, but maybe you do, because they put it in this nice infographic, this fun format for you to take a look at. And number 10, let's just be honest, it's brand familiarity. Just like when your nana goes onto the internet and she calls it Facebook, because that's all she does, is uses Facebook. Spotify is music for people. It's almost like hoovering for your carpet and Texter for your markers. It is. It's music for some people. Spotify equals music. It's the default choice. Switching costs are high, let's be honest. When you switch from one thing to another, not only do you have to get used to a brand new interface and a brand new user experience, you lose things like your playlists and your histories and your habits and all that creepy data that they collected that helps the algorithm tell you exactly what you want to listen to. You no longer have that benefit. Continuous rollout of new features. So yes, Spotify have added things over time. It's not just, see, this is what I say about subscriptions, is a good subscription will continue adding value. A subscription for something that is static, you don't feel like paying that $9 a month or $15 a month. But when something feels like it's consistently adding features, you're getting exclusive early releases, you're getting video, you're getting podcasts, you're getting audiobook listening that you can do now. And all that's just being added in for quote unquote free, even though you're already paying for it. That kind of gives you that feeling of being special. And look, it just absolutely dominates amongst Gen Z, millennials, Gen Alpha. Anyone under the age of about 40 is Spotify equals music. And that may change, but for right now, when someone is online on any platform and I talk to anyone about music, what do they care most about? Their Spotify numbers. If someone asks me a question about, hey, how do I remove this song and re-release it using DistroKid? What's the biggest concern? Will it affect my Spotify streams? And even when I say, you're not going to lose any of the payments you get, you're still getting paid for all of those, the answer they come back with, well, no, I can't lose any of my streams. I need people to be able to see that tens and hundreds of thousands of people have been streaming my music. So having that vanity metric is obviously really important for the artist as well as the user. And speaking of artists, here's the kicker before we move into the next section. Even artists who are disgruntled, who are unhappy with Spotify, most of us stay. And I say us because, hand up here, I haven't loved everything that Spotify have done over the last couple of years. But I'm still there. And why am I there? Because the audience is there. Because you are probably there. Statistically, of all the people that listen to this podcast and are watching this video, the majority of you that have streaming music are still using Spotify. And you don't need to feel shame for that. Maybe after we go through the next section, you might feel some shame, but it is what it is, right? It's that thing. You can choose to vote with your wallet, but it's kind of like going to Starbucks, isn't it? You can try out the other things, but they're not going to be as streamlined, not going to be as ubiquitous. They won't be everywhere. It won't be familiar, and the quality might be worse. What do you get with Spotify? You get McDonald's. or Starbucks or Dunkin'. You get the warm, comfy, cozy experience where you know where everything is and you know what to expect. And in this topsy-turvy world of ours at the moment, I don't blame folks for that. I really don't. So there's your 10, but here's the catch. Here's the thing. I'm only going to give you 6 of these because look, to be honest, there's a lot of positives about this, and I want this to be balanced. I don't get into the whole let's just black or white or yes or no or good or bad. No, but there are some bad things, or at least some questionable things that you need to ask yourself if you're continuing to use Spotify in 2025. They don't pay out a lot to artists. Every time you see one of those charts that shows all the different payouts for artists, Spotify aren't always the lowest, but they're never the highest, and they're not usually in the top echelon there. So, yeah, they do pay, and look, there's different numbers around there, but $0.003 or point 0.3 of a cent per stream on average to 0.5 of a cent per stream. So it's going to take you 250, 300 streams to make a buck. And that's not easy to do. It's not easy to get hundreds, if not thousands of people to stream your music so you can make a buck, literally a buck, not even the make a buck, not even that version of it, but literally a buck. That all changed. So that was pretty average. And artists like myself, you know what? You probably made enough. Well, I made enough from Spotify to cover the costs of my distributor. And you might say, well, at that point, why bother? Well, because I want my music out there. I want people to be able to listen to it. And if someone's going to get paid, even if it's $30 a year, why not this guy? If it's my music, right? However, in 2024, the new threshold model means that tracks under 1,000 streams per year may generate zero revenue. And let me tell you, they do. As someone who has a number of tracks and EPs and albums out there, the majority of which generate less than 1,000 per year, I don't get paid by Spotify anymore. So indie artists often earn less than $100 a year from the platform. That's where I was. I was earning, on a good year, $50, $70, $80, $100. I now earn zero or close to it. And the whole idea of that was that they wanted to take that pool of money that's small for non-professional musicians and funnel it into other artists. So the idea was, because if you think about it, the whole idea of saying per stream makes no sense because that assumes a set number of songs out there and a set number of users and listeners. Instead, they're both pools. So it's a big pool of music that's being listened to, and it's a big pool of paid and advertising that comes in as money. And all that they're doing is balancing out that pool of money with the pool of artists and how much of their music's being streamed. It's why you see the question's wrong to say how much do they pay per stream. It's how, based on my music, proportionally, how much are people listening to me versus other artists, and how much revenue after expenses, which is important, is coming into Spotify for them to pay artists. And the end result of all of that is not as much as they could, or some would say should be. So lower payouts for artists is a problem. Algorithmic favoritism, that's the name of the game. So editorial and algorithmic playlists, they do skew towards top charting artists. It's that thing that's like, you got to have money to make money, kid. We can't give you that job because you're not experienced. And it's like, well, how do I get experience if you won't give me the job? It's kind of like that with the algorithm and with playlist editors. It's like, you're already really good and you're making a living wage. We'll give you more. Whereas meanwhile, you're trying to crack through and break through. No, you don't get that. So true discovery is actually getting harder. And this is why a lot of people say to me, the way you look at things, which is that, high tide raises all ships, and everyone, it should be open to everyone. We should have a level playing field for everyone to be able to create and release their music. Some people say they shouldn't, because some people say it's muddying the waters. I would say that AI is muddying the waters a lot worse, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So, niche genres and independent artists, we often fall through the cracks, don't we? And it's harder than ever. People, the number one question I get asked and I have almost zero answer to is, how do I promote my music? How do I get more ear holes to listen to my mouth noises? And it's hard. because there's so much noise going out there and a finite number of ear holes. And as you as a consumer would realize, you want to listen to what you want to listen to. So every time I fire up OK Computer by Radiohead and I don't listen to new up and coming indie artists, I'm doing them a disservice. I'm getting Tom York one more ivory back scratcher while an indie artist goes hungry and ends up having to go and get a real job. So yeah, it is tough, isn't it? Yeah, and the feedback loop that you get, it can hurt diversity. The manipulation that can happen. And look, manipulation, it sounds negative. It's not even a negative word. It just means that something's there and there's a factor that is actually manipulating it. It's happening. I manipulate things as well. I have a bias. We all do. Whether they're conscious or unconscious, I have a bias towards 90s grunge alt rock style music, guitar driven with drums and bass. So when I listen to a hip hop track or a rap track, it's immediately harder for that artist to crack through with me. Yeah, they've got to be really, really good. And it's the same. So whatever is quote unquote popular, if you're not creating that music and you're not part of the in crowd, the algorithm is going to favorite others, isn't it? Let's talk about AI. The AI generated music and deep fake controversy. So in 2023, fake AI Drake and Weeknd track Heart on My Sleeve hit 250,000 plays before it was taken down. And the problem is that there's no clear policy. To this day, there's still no clear policy on what you can do with synthetic voices or music clones or AI generated music. Spotify is indeed investing in AI DJ and AI podcast narration. So there's questions around the authenticity and what they actually think should be. Because the artistic integrity, like we can sit here on our soapboxes and say, but art should be human. It should be humans doing things for humans. But guess what? If you're a business and you can get a robot to do the work of those humans and not have to pay the robot that you would have to pay the humans, then guess what? Businesses are being led by shareholders, and shareholders are being placated by CEOs and managers who want to put money in the pockets of their investors, whether they're public or private companies. It all comes down to the investor, venture capital investors, or shareholders, mums and pops, or hedge funds, massive, huge hedge funds and pension funds. They all just want to make money. And when you put the money before the art, guess what happens? Yeah, it's exactly what happens here. So artists like Nick Cave and Halsey have openly criticised AI music on the platform. In fact, I even did a little parody song about Nick Cave hating AI, written by AI. Why? Because it was the 2023 and I was a fun muckraker, and how did I know that 2025 everything would happen? We've got to talk about this. We're going to talk about the executive disconnect. I talked about CEOs and managers and people at the top not getting it and not having a great relationship or connection with the community of artists in particular, but even consumers. So if you don't know, Spotify's Daniel Ek has had some interesting things to say. And one of the things he said, he's quoted as saying, is you can't record once every 3 to 4 years and expect to make a living. So basically saying that creators have to just be constantly creating. It's quantity over quality. So the old model of and I'll keep speaking on Radiohead. Let's say Tool. Tool go into the studio every 3 to 4 years and they create a masterpiece. But in that 3 or 4 years, they're writing and they're harnessing and they're honing and they're making their songs the best they can be. They're touring, they're engaging with fans, and they create a masterpiece of an album. When Daniel Ek said, no, you can't do that. You can't just put one release out every 3 to 4 years and expect to make money. He was basically saying that you need to be constantly making music. So many artists saw this as dismissive of the whole creative process, and public trust issues with Spotify's focus on that volume of content over the actual artistry is a big thing. He also came out about a year ago and had some other comments to say about the fact that making music is easy and anyone can do it, and it doesn't actually require any skill. Don't know about you, but it requires a lot of skill. It requires a lot of practice. It requires some determination. It requires guts. It requires courage. It requires human ingenuity. And I will still kind of, what is it, hoist myself on my own petard? No, die on that hill. I will continue to push for the fact that as much as I love technology and as much as I think that things like AI for drummers and even for speech synthesis these days and for keys parts and for cleaning up things, hey, they're all just part of it, but they kind of have been ever since the first person put a noise reduction plugin or a voice changer plugin or a vocoder. Like, yeah, we've been using effects that you could easily have called AI for decades, but there's a difference between, I think, my personal opinion is there's a difference between me writing a song and because I don't program drums very well, using Logic Pro's Auto Drummer versus someone putting a prompt saying, great 90s style punk song in style of Blink 182, and then they get that song out the other end. I don't think that's the same. And I know I try to relate it over to other art forms. So I'm not someone who is a great artist when it comes to drawing or painting or sculpting. I don't have a lot of skills to pay the bills in those areas, and therefore I respect people that do. But I wouldn't want to put a prompt in there and get an image. And you might say, but you do that for your thumbnails and you do that for your social media stuff. Yeah, but I'm not entering in art competitions and you don't have to pay for it and you don't, like, I don't know. I think there's a distinction. Maybe not. Maybe I'm a giant hypocrite. Who knows? But yeah, every time you speak about Spotify, someone's going to mention the name Daniel Ek and his lack of, I guess, alignment with what some folks, at least in the community, think. And you know what? Some folks don't care. Some folks don't know who Daniel Ek is. They got no idea about Spotify's ownership or how they're run or their profits or how they pay their artists. And in the nicest possible way, some of them simply don't care. And that's where we're at. It's where we're at in a capitalist society. I don't want to get all like, oh, capitalism bad, but it's kind of where we're at. We focus in on profiteering. What a company's going to do, they're going to make profits. The closed ecosystem. So Spotify. Some of the FOMO. I talked before about how easy it is to get into Spotify and use Spotify. Yeah, but it can be that kind of, let's create a walled garden. Remember the old like AOL days or the days of the internet where you would go into this walled garden of content? Well, Spotify can feel a little bit like that sometimes. There is the exclusive content. So if you are into Joe and or Rogan, it locks you in, doesn't it? You're not going to use another platform. It limits open distribution, whereas podcasting, it was syndicated. Like, it's called RSS. So podcasts used to be using RSS feeds, which was really simple syndication, which meant you didn't matter. It was ubiquitous. You didn't matter what the end device you were playing it on is. You're just sourcing it from the same source. And then where you play it, whether you download it, whether you stream it, whether you play it on a device, whether you play it on a computer, it shouldn't matter. What's happened in recent times is because of the exclusivity, because people have been paid millions and billions and squazillions, actual number of dollars, not an actual number, to have their podcast on one platform, that's limiting. And that means that if users really like that particular creator, then they have to go to that podcast platform. So artists can't message followers directly or sell merch natively. So unlike platforms like Bandcamp, which is somewhere that I really dig, I think Bandcamp is super cool, you can't do the same sort of thing on Spotify. It's a closed ecosystem, at least if you're one of us little folks. Yeah, there's exclusive deals for people that are higher up. And people say that to me. They're like, why can't I release like a bonus edition or an exclusive limited edition? And why can other artists A do that and I can't? And the sad and unfortunate one-word answer is money. The finger thing means the money. Because other artists have these exclusive deals. Brands and labels, they can actually make direct deals and they can get perks. And it is not a level playing field. Not you as an artist releasing through DistroKid. As much as I love DistroKid and they do the absolute best they can to support indie artists, They just simply can't make the same exclusivity deals that others can, that successful artists can actually make, and artists that are going through labels. So I will still say independent is the way to go, because for every person that signs a contract and signs with a record label that quote unquote makes it, there's another 999 who don't, who end up either making no money or owing money back to their label and not owning their masters. So they can't actually use them. And we've seen it time and time again. Taylor Swift only just got hers back from Skeeterson, or whoever that bloke was. By the way, at this point in time, I'll just say that the opinions expressed in this week's show, this podcast, are those of me and do not represent slander or anything, because I don't know, maybe the Skeeterson guy's nice. Maybe he was doing the best he possibly could at the time. No built-in fan funding or tipping for creators. And yeah, you definitely get more tools if you go to somewhere like slaps.com or SoundCloud or Bandcamp or Reverb Nation. You got a lot more control, especially as an independent creator. Music has background noise, so the growth of mood and vibe playlists and low engagement listening. So critics are saying that Spotify is turning music into sonic wallpaper. So the less offensive, the less obstructive it can be, the more it just sits in the background, the better. And you've all seen these. In fact, Spotify themselves cracked down on a lot of this stuff, because what people were doing is that they were putting out big, long soundscapes and chopping them down into 30-second chunks. Well, now they've said, no. Those chunks have to be at least 2 minutes. So now they chop them down into 2-minute and 1-second chunks and release that, so that each song actually counts as a separate listen, because Spotify decided that they would pay based on plays, not based on the amount of time listened, not the engagement, the actual overall time. Which is great if you're a punk band with 2-minute songs, not so great if you're a classical performer or a jazz musician playing 14-minute songs. You get the same pay as someone who has a 2-minute song. And some people are arguing, some people say, I'll say, it rewards quantity and sameness over creativity and risk-taking. Why would you go out of your way to create something different, something outside the box, something shocking, something that's going to push the boundaries, when you might risk not hitting the algorithm, where you could just make 20 different versions of the same very boring pedestrian song, and through quantity over quality, it'll get paid. And now, look, someone's already typing in the comments, Johns, you say you should create, record, release. You say you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You sure do. And that's very different, isn't it? That's very different from just deliberately creating and releasing music to suit the end goal, to suit the algorithm, to suit the robots, rather than making something that you're proud of, that you want to listen to. Because you've got to ask yourself that. If you don't want to listen to it, people say, I feel weird when I listen to my own songs. I'm like, you should be rocking out to your own music on the daily. When I'm feeling down, I throw on my 2018 album called Selfish Aware and I listen to it end to end, completely shamelessly, completely enjoying it. Why? Because I like the music I make. Why on earth would I make music that I don't like? I mean, sure, do I still cringe at some of the production things or some of the notes I didn't hit quite right? Absolutely I do. But do I like the music? Of course I do, because I make music for me. And look, I'm not saying that I could be a rock star, live large, big house, 5 cars, if I went the other way. And if people do that, if a lot of people do a lot of things for money, as opposed to their own artistic integrity. And I get it. I worked jobs that I didn't love for 30 years before I landed, luckily, in this seat where I get to talk about this stuff for a living. So I understand and I get it. So again, but please continue typing the comments, because I may have blind spots. I almost definitely do. We all do. It's about understanding that we have them. And then when people raise them, not getting all prickly. Because you all know that person. You all know that person that has blind spots that you want to give feedback to, but you know the second you start giving them the feedback, they'll get defensive, or they'll turn it around on you and tell you why you suck, or they'll deny it, or they'll get offended and never talk to you again. We know, don't we? You know that person, and you know that you're not going to tell them what they need to hear. We've got some billionaires that have that problem right now, surrounded by yes people. never been told that their ideas are stupid, so they just keep doing them. All right. So, yeah, this push for skip-proof algorithm-safe tracks has definitely flattened the landscape. I want to know what you think. I've given you all of my opinions and all of my thoughts here. So, yeah, 10 reasons why Spotify keeps winning, and 6 reasons why some artists are ready to walk away, and some you listeners and users are starting to just dip their little toesies in the waters of Apple Music or Amazon Music or Tidal or Deezer or YouTube Music. And you know what? It's all pretty much the same. So you don't get a specifically or consistently different thing. It's a bit like all the social media apps now. The different people are like, oh, I love Instagram. Oh, I hate Facebook. They're both owned by Meta. They're almost exactly the same. Or I love TikTok. I hate YouTube. Guess what? TikTok is trying to be more like YouTube. It's adding long form content. It's adding landscape content. YouTube is trying to be more like TikTok. It added shorts. It's adding all of these social interaction features. Twitch is trying to be, YouTube Live is trying to be like Twitch, and Twitch is trying to, everyone's trying to be like everyone else. So the good news is that there's really isn't that much difference between a lot of these platforms, but use what works for you. Yeah, as creators and listeners, we're kind of caught in the middle of a platform that's both incredibly useful and deeply frustrating. So I want to hear from you. Are you still using Spotify? Have you tried switching? Did you give it a crack and you didn't like it? What's keeping you there? Or what are the things that are going to drive you away? Please leave a comment, leave a message, send me an email, a carrier pigeon, a smoke signal. No, don't use smoke signals. They're very bad for the environment. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, do the subscribe and the bells and all the YouTube things. You know what? Everyone tells you to do the YouTube things. Do all the YouTube things because I'm here every week talking about something like this. We've got live shows on every weekend, as well as a bunch of tutorials to help keep you up to date with the latest and greatest in the world of music creation. Until next time, folks, keep creating. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I'll see you next time.